Welcome to Love and Speak the Truth, a podcast with Sister B and friends. It might get messy, sacred to secular. Don't judge. All voices will be heard here. So listen up. We're going to explore the human experience through the lens of wisdom sharing and faith, with a worldview that might shock you, move you, even downright inspire you. We welcome today a beautiful and articulate Mary Ward woman from across the pond, Annette Haseneder. She is coming to us from Germany. She's a super companion of Mary Ward in our soon-to-be home congregation, the Congregation of Jesus. Annette will take us back to her school days and catching the fire of passion and vision of Mary Ward. She regales us with the precious, empowering gift of boarding school and girls' education. Our time in conversation is a grace time, filled with pondering about identity and possibilities. We will journey across the Alps and move into the reality that our journey can be far away and arduous, or it can be close to home, yet challenging. But we go in hope, faith, and an openness to the will of God in our lives. We might learn something about ourselves in this conversation. We welcome Annette. So welcome, Annette. It is so great to have you in the studio today and to get to know you a little bit. I just want to say that I'm looking forward to our conversation coming all the way from Germany.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's a great pleasure and also a great honor.
So let's begin just by sharing a little bit about your background and where you situate yourself. And we'll get into this conversation about Mary Ward and her legacy. And hopefully we'll find some contact of bringing some light to her. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I think we must start this story fairly early in my life. As an 11-year-old, when I started being a pupil, a student at one of the Mary Ward schools in Germany, in Munich, in fact. I had an earlier school experience which was not very nice at all. My parents had heard of the Mary Ward schools and thought it might be a good move for me to go to that school instead. At first, I wasn't entirely convinced whether this should make any difference, but it was in fact during the first week that I suddenly realized, oh goodness, this is such a different kind of experience. And I felt at home. I felt heard. And from the start, it was just my place. And I was given the freedom to make it my place. And I was astounded that as an 11-year-old, I was entitled to be part of this school environment. I just knew that this is a wonderful place. I was so fond of the atmosphere and I wanted more and more of it. So I had realized that some of my friends at school, they went to the boarding school. Mm-hmm. And I was a day school pupil. So I asked my parents, can I be a boarder as well? No, my parents were rather shocked and pleased at the same time, because for once they thought, well, she really likes it there. But at the same time, they thought to themselves, well, what does that school have that our daughter is, wanting to leave family for? It was a rather unexpected kind of family dilemma for all of us.
What's your family situation, your family background? Are you an only child?
No, I have a much younger brother. He was 6 years younger than he still is 6 years younger than I am. So he was still a primary pupil at the time. And I was going into secondary education that year. So it was obvious that, in a way, I was the pioneer in higher education for my parents. And we were a happy family, just very normal, really. And in Germany, it's not such a prestigious thing as, for instance, in England, to be able to send a kid to boarding school. In England, that is a sign of your wealth, and probably also, in a way, that you are looking after a good education for your daughter or your son. That is not part of German culture at all. Boarding school is more looked at as, an emergency solution for a difficult family situation, which wasn't there, or if the school was really far away from where the family lived. So my parents were completely surprised when I started moaning, being a real teenager, um, you know, disrespecting my parents' care and wanting to go to boarding school instead. Now, that was a bit exacerbated by the fact that at the time, the boarding school was still in fairly old fashioned kind of style. Now, we had dormitories of 10 or 12 beds, and my mother was, what is it that draws Annette to that place? She has her own bedroom back at home, and she wants that instead. And I couldn't explain, but I'm very grateful that my parents trusted me. And my parents just said to me, listen, this is entirely because you want that. If there is anything that makes you say, listen, I want to be back at home, you just tell us, and that will happen.
So you had some introduction into the culture of Mary Ward life as a young girl, as a student. I wonder if you could share a little bit about who Mary Ward is and who Mary Ward is for you, and why would people want to know about her? There's a certain culture and there's a certain environment where people find an ability to thrive as we know it. But maybe people will be interested to hear a little bit about your experience of Mary Ward and why should people want to know her?
Well, I got to know Mary Ward as someone who was a very down to earth person. And I could relate to it because I thought to myself, wow, she really tried to explore as much as she could possibly do. And she tried to make experiences that were way outside her scope. Just a few years earlier in her life, she would have never dreamt of doing such and such a thing. And then a few years later, she did exactly that. And so I felt a bit like that because I thought to myself, wow, here I am as a pupil in a boarding school. And I wouldn't have thought so myself just even a few months earlier. So I felt that here we have someone who doesn't stop to explore. And even if she realizes that this is something that won't work for her, she was happy that she did make the effort to try out as much as possible. And for some reason, I felt drawn to that ability to never give up too early. And it's only recently that I heard someone saying, only if you say yes, you can have certain experiences. And that yes is something that I experienced as well in the wish to be able to go to boarding school. And luckily, my parents said yes to that as well. And until today, I'm really grateful for that. And later, well, there were a few things. My parents were nearly to move house because of my father's job, but also at the same time, I felt that I'd rather be back at home in my family. And so I just enjoyed that freedom to be able to say to my parents, listen, this is the moment when I have had that beautiful experience of being part of that Mary Ward community. And now I'd like to be back. And that was possible. And now I must add that at the same time, I realized that others who had been at boarding school weren't there because they were free like I was. They were there because of difficult family situations, or they were there because their home was far away from the school. And so suddenly, when I told them that I'm going, to be a day girl again, I experienced a lot of envy, and I wasn't prepared for that. And I felt really, really sorry because throughout my years at boarding school, I was so immersed in that community, I hadn't realized how free I was and how unfree the others were.
So fast forward to your experience of Mary Ward now, and it sounds as if you received a lot of confidence in your experience as a young girl in the Mary Ward school. You were able to articulate for yourself and for your parents what you were ready for next. And now, as you look at the whole idea of Mary Ward schools, or even in fact, who Mary Ward was herself, what would you say to people today about creating an atmosphere where a young woman is able to find her own voice in the world, in the church, perhaps? What gave you that confidence? And as you live your life now, how does Mary Ward play any role in that?
Now, a big role, I think, is provided by groups that are entirely female. Now, this was and still is a girls' school, and the fact that it was and still is not co-ed meant to me as an older student that I was really, really free to explore myself and not find obstacles in the way or the feeling to be judged all the time. So I do remember, and I did say it then, that the fact that we were an entirely girls' environment meant that we were so free for subjects that were outside the normal teeny discussion. We engaged in art. We were really diving into social sciences. We were discussing politics, and nobody ever stopped us. This was entirely about ourselves. And surely I enjoyed boys' company outside school, and I felt that the confidence that I took from my prior discussions at school never hindered me to, be open-minded and open-spoken about anything outside school either. But I did see that others who were constantly in that mixed environment did feel that as a girl, you would not usually say that, or as a girl, I shouldn't have a say about such and such a topic, or they simply hadn't made up their minds about things. Because what I loved about school was that in our class, in our year, there was no talk about, which boy is going out, which girl, and why are they split up, and all these love affairs that are constantly going on in people's lives at the age of 15 to 18 and later. That simply didn't have so much space. It did have space, but not so much. And so we were so free to explore other things instead. It gave us a voice. It gave us a very firm opinion about different topics. And it gave us the feeling that as women, we can sit down and discuss things thoroughly, in detail, be open with each other. And you asked about the big takeaway. And that is still what I would like to tell everybody today. If you really want to follow Mary Ward's ideas, it's exactly that. Give young girls and young women the space to think, to reflect, to look at things properly, not just superficially. Encourage them to speak out, encourage them to be part of the discussion, have bold ideas, express them, and try and visualize them and put them into reality.
Is that what you're doing now in your work?
Absolutely. My work consists of exactly that, trying to tell people part of Mary Ward's ideas, trying to be a voice as a layperson, trying to be a highlighting voice in the discussion of who Mary Ward can be today for our lives in the 21st century, trying to be a voice for each and every school child. What can Mary Ward tell you today?
Why is that important for us to engage in that way? When you look around and you hear about feminism today, I wonder, was Mary Ward a feminist of her time? For me, she was much more of a mystic. For me, she had a relationship with God that was not external but internal, and she knew the presence of God in her life. Why is that important for us to engage with the identity of a woman like Mary Ward today? Is it relevant?
I think it's entirely relevant, mainly because even in the Western world, in very modern societies, we often think that women and men are the same. But if we look closely again, we must recognize the fact that men and women are not the same in our society. We still have so many things to catch up with. There is still so much misogyny going on. And you only feel it if you look closely. And I think this is something that Ignatius has told us and has told Mary Ward. Mary Ward, during her time, would probably not have felt that she was a feminist. And the term feminism didn't exist in her day. But feminism has a history. The history of feminism starts exactly there. Women who feel that they have a voice too. And if it's God given, like Mary Ward's engagement in the world and in the church, Mary Ward's spirituality, that she wants to follow the Ignatian pathway, it's not just men who can do this, can be also women. I think she's part of feminism's history. And so, even though she would have never called herself a feminist, in effect, I think she was. And in particular, it's only recently that I tried to read more about what men thought women's place was in the church. And they were not supposed to even put out their thoughts about Bible readings, about their own interpretation of different parts of the Bible. And she realized, well, if this is something God given, it's given to everyone, not just to the men. And so I feel this is highly relevant until today. And particularly today, as we discuss so many things inside and outside the church, may it be Catholic, may it be Protestant, may it be in other denominations, or indeed in other religions too.
Yes, I can resonate with that, Annette, because there is a way where we can compartmentalize our way of thinking and seeing, and maybe the words are different in the different times. I think our relationship with each other and with God as we go through the journey of faith and spirituality, wherever we find ourselves in the religious realm, we find the kinds of things that Mary Ward felt called to addressing when she used the term women to come will do much, when she invites us to be holy gods and wholly aware of what we as women are called to do and to be. I think sisters who have joined the Institute have become religious women, not in the same model of living in closure, but in the model of going to where the needs are the greatest. I think she is one of our foremothers in helping us to see that we can be strong and we can be fully alive in doing God's work, whatever that might be, whatever we are called to. And we don't have to do it the same way men did it or does it. We do it in the way that we feel called to do it. And for me, that's been a real gift of my vocation, as well as my mission and ministry. Women love differently than what men love. We find ourselves in relationship to understanding of who we are meant to be. And I find it very fascinating that you, as a lay person who work with giving people an experience of Mary Ward in your work, taking them to Yorkshire, where she was from, preparing them to find their own calling in all of this. How do you resonate with that yourself?
The trips to York are a wonderful experience in several ways, but these experiences can be had in similar ways outside of York. Maybe not in such a direct way, because it helps to understand the places where Mary Ward came from. But the most important aspect of the process is the person who travels. And it doesn't really matter whether they travel for real or whether they travel with their heart. I have had meetings with teachers in Germany who are very doubtful about the church, who have difficulties trying to find an identity in themselves, but they feel touched by the example Mary Ward trusted in herself, trusted in her calling, trusted in God, trusted in the positive outcome. I don't know whether I can make people see or whether I can help people see or feel that they can start exploring for themselves just as well. And it will be good for them, and it will be lots of fun, and it will not be always successful, but it will be much better than staying put where they were for ages and ages, or where they feel they should be, or where they maybe were told they should be. Rather, they should try and find their pathway, the very individual pathway across the Alps, so to speak. Just as Mary Ward didn't really know what she would find on the other side. And certainly each time she crossed these mountains, I sometimes wonder what she must have thought that she was doing. And I live so close to the Alps, and even now, it is January now, the weather is not nice. And I sometimes don't really go out a lot because the weather's not nice. And here we are with a woman who crossed the Alps in that kind of weather. So she must have thought a lot about her craziness, but she knew it was worthwhile. She didn't know what it was worthwhile for, but she just went on with it in the literal sense.
Yes, and I so much agree. I think that when you say that she invites people to travel outside of their comfort, outside of their fear of movement, because women were meant to be stable and in the home or under the thumb of some man or the church even. But she invited us to move and not to be afraid of that movement. And I love how you said it's not just movement in travel, it was movement of the heart. And somehow that movement takes you out of the fear of moving away from what you are familiar with. And that's something that I think is a real Mary Ward calling, is to move away from the familiar just because it's safe, huh?
Absolutely. And part of that moving away is also perseverance, not giving up. The moment when you realize I should be headstrong now. I must pull that through because I want it.
Mm.
Because I don't know why, but I feel it's the right thing to do. And here again, Mary Ward is such a great example because we have a woman who, as I said, sometimes didn't know the outcomes and she didn't know whether this made any sense whatsoever, but she pulled it through.
Mm.
She said, something makes me walk across those Alps for a third time. So that's what I do.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
so in situations in life, not to give up too early, not to be the obstacle in yourself, in your own thoughts, but rather trust your craziness rather than trust your own obstacles. Yeah. I think that trust in your own craziness, or I should rather say, trust your own visions.
Yes.
Just what women must do much more often in our lives, just as well as than 400 years ago.
Hmm. Yes. What is your work now? I know that you are part of the Congregation of Jesus Ministries. Tell us a little bit about this work and how that dynamic plays out in your work.
Being able to do that work was part of my vision. And it took a long time, I must say, but the happier I am now that I can do it. And again, that path was part of my personal Mary Ward perseverance. I thought to myself, I want this. And I knew it is part of, I think, what I can do well. And so I'm really, really pleased that I was given the chance to do it now. I go out and visit all the schools that find interest in promoting or living the Mary Ward profile in their schools, in their group of members of staff. I am invited to speak about Mary Ward. I'm invited to speak about what does her life mean to us as a school in the 21st century. What kind of teaching should we offer? Our schools, for obvious reasons, are all bound and standardized by some sort of curriculum. However, there is so much else we can do with these curricula to make the schools good Mary Ward schools. Now, how can we combine these things? The Mary Ward spirituality, the Mary Ward pedagogy, if you like, and try and bring to fruition the curriculum in Mary Ward's ways. And to be able to do that, I tend to think to myself, basically what teachers must understand is that they are free to work with this curriculum in a very creative way, that they should try and find the magis in the topics. What goes deeper? What is more meaningful, both in the sense of the topic, but also in the sense of what do young people need today? They are the ones who are going to be the creators of the end of the 21st century and probably even the beginning of the next century. So, what will they need? What do we find in Mary Ward's attitudes, in her kind of values that we want to pass on? It's all about passing on the fire. That again, they have the courage, they have the space to find their voices and to trust that these are great ideas that our societies need.
Brilliant. I think that also ties back into the image that you gave me a few minutes ago. It's helping us to travel beyond our own limitations. And some limitations are self-made. Some limitations are given to us by our societies and our cultures and even our prejudices. In the school system, you are a part of the energy of promoting how Mary Ward encompasses each individual person to be the Magus, to become the Magus, to live that Magus. Yes, I think I really can, engage with that. And so you go and you give talks to the teachers to help
Yes,
them.
workshop, talks, formation days. That's what I do. I try to also, um, some teachers really find it very difficult these days to engage in something, or I should say, to engage in anything that sounds religious.
Mm.
And some of our schools have moved away quite a bit from the religious spirituality. But with them, I usually take a lot of pride if they say, well, but Mary Ward is great. At least here we have a figure that is so much part of our church, but she still speaks to people even outside the scope of the churches. And they can relate to her in many different ways. And so for some, I also try to offer very simple teaching aids. So I sit down and I think to myself, well, what do they need? They have maybe 1 or 2 lessons and they want to fill it with something about Mary Ward. And I try and come up with a worksheet or with a creative kind of lesson plan. And sometimes it is very unusual subjects like geography. And sometimes it is the more direct way, like RE lessons, like religious education lessons. And so I try to cater for everyone. The members of staff see that everybody is part of that legacy. Everybody can be the person who can pass on the fire, because we don't know how the pupils, the girls, and also the boys react if they hear about Mary Ward. They might hear about Mary Ward through a history teacher in a very factual kind of way. But once they have heard about her, they might feel interested in wanting to learn more about her. So we don't know God's ways, and we don't know how Mary Ward can speak to the next generation. So I want to be as open-minded about this as somehow possible. And also, I find that the schools can only be good Mary Ward schools if everybody feels that they can be a part of this legacy. If we have, I don't know, a chemistry teacher saying, well, it's nothing to do with me. Well, that's not part of being part of the school family. If you want to be a good Mary Ward school.
Yes. What if you're not in a school? And what I'm thinking of here is what happens when the sisters are gone? You're a lay woman and you are filled with the fire, I can tell. The sisters are very much in different parts of the world, no longer in schools. And schools are not necessarily where we're going to make the most inroads in sharing that fire, that openness, that freedom, the whole work towards justice and being people of integrity. We're not necessarily in positions to promote that in schools anymore. Where does that reside when you don't have a framework, as we once did, to hand on the whole idea of it in our lesson plans or in our school settings? So where does that reside outside of the school?
Well, in a way, I feel that this situation is already a reality even in Germany. There is only one sister still teaching in one Mary Ward school. And I should say that apart from maybe 3 schools, all the communities of sisters left the properties of the former Mary Ward schools. So I still have the framework, i.e., school. And as a layperson, I speak to other lay people. And I think if we go back to Mary Ward's calling to be there for young people, I still think the school is by far the very best place to start being with young people. I do understand that there are situations why the sisters have moved away from that school system. And I find it so difficult to give you an answer with this, because I'm so much a school person.
Mhm.
I believe in the effect of education. And although you can educate other people just as well, I feel that being with young people and educating the young gives them so much more scope for development. I mean, the development is always possible, but to be a meaningful force that can guide you throughout life, you must be lucky enough to have had the chance to hear about the good sources early in life. And so I find education and schools and young people just the best option possible.
Well, what you said just now was you're finding yourself saying you're a lay person talking to other lay people. And these lay people are somehow in the schools, they're teachers, and you're handing on that fire. And so I think I could engage with this idea that when the sisters are gone, it will be the lay people handing on the charism, handing on the fire to those other lay people who may or may not be necessarily associated with religion as Mary Ward did. She was a faithful woman in the Catholic tradition. But now, in our time, that's much more diverse and scattered. And so it's handing on that fire to the people who are actually in the classroom and the classroom of life. As you say, you have to travel outside of yourself to go deeper into what people are called to be, who they're called to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, maybe it is just a wonderful opportunity to be able to guide other teachers who then can be such powerful voices because they have been able to experience what it's like to travel with your heart, to move on in
Yeah.
life and to
Yes.
find your own voice. I feel that a lot of our schools, even though they are state run these days or run by a trust, they are still to the core really good Mary workplaces because they have been able to pass on the Mary Ward spirit in relevant ways. Even the young teachers who come without any connection to Mary Ward whatsoever, they immediately have the feeling, wow, this school is nice. Members of staff are nice. Colleagues are lovely. Pupils are good. What's going on in this school? Why is it the way it is? And they find maybe similar things that I found when I was an 11-year-old.
Okay, so let's just take a little trip down future lane. We are as sisters and as companions of Mary Ward, lay people, men and women, our religious congregations, the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and our sister congregation, the Congregation of Jesus, are in the process of this year of finalizing, I could say that I think with some authority, our process of becoming one institute. When we were very dispersed for some time throughout history. What do you think of this movement, actually? What do you think of it? A layperson handing on the fire. What do you think of this movement?
I think it's great. So far, it was the phase of wooing and getting engaged. I think you are entering the marriage stage. And as a married woman, I can tell you that surprises will happen. You think you know the other one so well, and there are surprises and surprises, one after the other. And you feel that you're surprising the other partner without realizing that this is surprising at all. Be brave for good surprises and negative surprises, but never even believe that these surprises come consciously
Mhm.
or willingly, and you will have a great marriage.
Well, that's an interesting metaphor to rest with and to finish up with. And I also want to say that being in relationship always takes a lot of work. So that's what we pray for every day, huh? It's a matter of crossing the Alps together and not tripping each other up. So it's really been a real pleasure to kind of squeeze out some of the nuances of being a Mary Ward woman. You as a layperson and myself as religious, we come together with this understanding, but also with the fire of who she was and is for us. So I want to ask you one final thing. What is the one truth that you live by? You know, now this podcast is called Love and Speak the Truth, right? So I'm sure you have many bits of wisdom that you could share, but maybe there's one little nugget that you would like to share that you've lived by in the Mary Ward spirit.
Well, one Mary Ward nugget is, if you feel inspired, trust yourself, trust your gut feeling, and trust the spirit. It will guide you.
Yes. Amen. That's beautiful. It's all about trust, isn't it? And she trusted
Absolutely.
deeply. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Annette. I've been blessed to have you as a guest today, and I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And now for the wrap up. You have just had a human experience from a spiritual being. We have so much to learn. So go forth to love and speak the truth. Ad majorem Dei Gloria.